I'm joined now by Adam Klasfeld from All Rise News. Adam, we've got a decision now from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals that we have been waiting for to see whether or not those judges would engage in en banc review, which is basically an effort to overturn a three-judge panel's decision to allow Donald Trump's troop deployment in LA to stand. So can you explain what that en banc, what the full breadth of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals has decided to do?
The full Ninth Circuit panel will not hear and review the decision that had allowed Trump to deploy the troops into Los Angeles. That was what the three-judge panel of the Ninth Circuit allowed Trump to do. The full court will not intervene, but there were 11 dissents, meaning 11 judges think that it's so exceptionally grave that they should hear this now. I should note, just as we begin to put this into perspective, it's very unusual for the Ninth Circuit or any appellate court to intervene in what's a preliminary decision. Right now, we're not at the merits phase of anything. There hasn't been a oral arguments on the merits or a trial or anything like that. And so it would, in normal instances, be difficult to get a full Ninth Circuit panel to authorize an en banc review. But in this case, 11 judges thought that what Trump is doing, the deployment of the National Guard during peacetime, is so exceptionally grave. In their words, that's how they described it, that this warranted immediate review. Here's what those judges said. Quote, "This case presents an issue of the gravest consequence, the peacetime deployment of military troops in American cities. For the first time in the nearly 250-year history of this country, the president claims extraordinary unilateral powers to order the National Guard troops onto the streets of select cities in response to short-term, hyper-localized domestic protests of federal policies." So that's why they're saying whatever the procedure may be, however unusual it might be, for a en banc panel of a federal appeals court to intervene, this is one of those moments. And that's what 11 judges of the 29 judge panel said. And we don't know how many of those other judges, the ones who declined review, whether they have concerns about this as well. We just know they're not taking up the case.
So talk to me about whether this is a final ruling here as it relates to Trump's troop deployment in LA versus just the Ninth Circuit full court's unwillingness to at least just put a temporary restraining order forward. Like, Trump had deployed these troops into Los Angeles. We haven't even gotten to the full trial phase. So can you explain what the difference is between the two and whether this means that all hope is lost here?
Right. That's a very good question, Brian. And you're absolutely right. This is preliminary. And that's what been trying to emphasize here, that what makes these 11 judges so outraged and so concerned is that, of course, under the usual circumstance, you wouldn't see the full panel of the Ninth Circuit say, let's hear this immediately before there's a merits, before there's a trial. But 11 judges are saying this is so out of step with American history. This is so out of step with constitutional ideals that we need to hear this now. I'll give an example. This is what they write in the dissent in the conclusion, that they noted that the panel, the three-judge panel that let Trump send in the troops, had made that ruling on what they call a perfunctory briefing and no knowledge as to what was coming next. Here's what they write. Quote, "What came next was the deployment of American troops to three more American cities, Washington, Portland, and Chicago, over the objections of local authorities, and repeated threats to send National Guard troops to get rid of problems and clean up many more cities, including Baltimore, San Francisco, Oakland, and New York." So they're saying, and they say even later, they note, hearing a case en banc is definitely unusual. It might be that the active judges who voted against hearing the case at this time are waiting to hear it later. They could be waiting for the Oregon case to, as one legal commentator put it, keep their powder dry to have a case where everything is procedurally ready to address this question. For these 11 judges who are writing this dissent, they're saying that the times are so extraordinary. Trump's actions are so out of step with our constitutional ideals. We need to hear this now. I'll read how they end, how the lead dissenter ends his ruling. He says that I continue to think that the president's disregard for the country's deep-seated commitment to the principle that armed forces must not be used as civil law enforcers except when there is no alternative should have been headed off now, not later. The panel opinion on the stay motion should have been reconsidered en banc. So, to your question, Brian, yes, this is temporary, but what these dissenting judges are saying is that the actions that Trump took are so extreme
Yeah.
that these procedural niceties don't cut it. You should have heard it now.
Right. And I mean, they also seem to recognize these dissenters who want to hear this full case, who want this case to go to en banc review. They seem to recognize that the very thin pretext that Trump put forward in the Los Angeles case is being used and abused as Trump continues to use that same baseless pretext to be able to deploy the troops in D.C. and Portland and Chicago and soon in San Francisco and all of the other cities that he's threatened to go into. And those people seem to recognize that. And yet, for some bizarre reason, these other judges don't seem to see that what they're doing by validating his abusive actions here is giving him that permission structure to be able to abuse his powers, to be able to abuse his authority and send the military baselessly into all of these other cities.
Absolutely. And it's funny, Brian, we've done a lot of these videos, and I feel like I say this often. It is rare to hear language like this because it's always true. Until Trump 2.0, you wouldn't hear 11 judges saying that this is a matter of the gravest consequence, that this is something that hasn't happened in our 250-year history. These are judges who recognize this as an emergency and that the whatever the procedural posture of this case might be at this time, this is a president who is wanting to send in troops when the facts don't seem to call for it in any city that seems to be led by Democratic officials and without any particular guardrails. So it's a matter of urgency here. We don't know how the full court would eventually come out. And we don't even know, to talk to your other point about the kind of the temporary nature of this. We can hear a different ruling tomorrow from the Ninth Circuit saying, yes, they'll hear the case in Oregon. But what these 10 judges are saying is that this is not a time for waiting. This is a time for action because this is so deviant. This is so out of step with our constitutional traditions. This needs to be acted upon now.
Now, how is this ruling here going to have any impact on the other cases? Because it seems like those other cases really have their own rulings. I mean, in Chicago, you have the Seventh Circuit that agreed with the trial court judge saying that Trump doesn't have the authority to deploy the troops, and so that was blocked. In Portland, there was a judge who had initially blocked it, Judge Immergut, who Trump himself appointed, and in the Ninth Circuit, you have a 2-1 panel that blocked the lower court judge's ruling. So each individual city seems to have its own thing going, but how is the decision in the Ninth Circuit as it relates to LA going to impact any other city, or will it have no impact on any other city because each of these cities is seeing its legal process play out unto itself?
Well, on the basic level, there is no majority opinion here. This was simply the full bench deciding not to hear the case. The evidence we have of this decision is the 11 furious judges who are angry about that decision. So it doesn't contribute anything so far as a precedential matter. What it does do, it adds to the record of alarm. These now 11 dissenting judges have their reasons memorialized in their dissents. There is an ongoing case before the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is deciding whether to intervene. I would expect, even though this isn't that, let me try that again. I would expect that the opinions of these judges will somehow make it to the Supreme Court's attention. So there could be influence. It would be persuasive influence, not necessarily a precedential influence. And it gets the word out
Well,
that not all of the judiciary is going along with this.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, you said that the dissent, the furious dissents of these 11 judges on the Ninth Circuit, that will eventually make its way to the Supreme Court. But isn't even more influential the fact that a majority of the judges on the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals decided not to hear this case again, and so isn't that even more influential as it relates to what the Supreme Court is going to take into account?
Absolutely. Look, they were outvoted. These are dissenting judges
Yeah.
because they were outvoted by the rest of the panel. What I'm saying is their legal arguments are out there.
Yeah.
Their reasoning is out there. And we don't know, because of the nature of en banc review, the judges who did not want to accept it, what their reasons were. Did they agree with Trump's deployment of the troops as a legal matter, or did they think the timing isn't right? The procedural posture isn't right for us to review it at this time. So I don't think it's going to have a tremendous amount of influence one way or another on the Supreme Court, but I do think it's going to be part of this national conversation. It's going to be another ringing of the alarm, pointing to the urgency of this. And it's now out there, and so is the not disturbed, so is a ruling that hasn't been disturbed that allows Trump's troops to remain in LA as we record this video.
I mean, I don't know how many other instances of people raising the alarms we really need out here. It seems like that we're in no short supply of. It's judges who are actually willing to come forward and do the right thing, not just people in the minority or without power who are waving their arms up and back and forth and saying, "Hey, something is really really wrong here." I think we've got plenty of that at this point. I wish we would just have people who would recognize what the law is and stop giving Donald Trump a clear runway to be able to abuse that law because he wants to usurp all authority for himself.
Absolutely. And that's unfortunately the situation that we're in here. It's this, and the last time we spoke, we were talking about the Oregon opinion, and we have one of the judges who was in the majority in that ruling, but wrote a concurring opinion, which it's not a holding, but what he argued for the most sweeping possible power that Trump could have. That when Trump says there's a rebellion, then there's a rebellion, that the decisions are unreviewable. Now, that isn't the law as interpreted by any of the courts that reviewed it, but it could be the law if the Supreme Court determines that it is. So right now, I know that the dissents and the fury and the outrage and the alarm might seem like they, in the words of William Shakespeare, signify nothing. But it's very much a live issue. And the fact that we don't know whether the Supreme Court is going to give away the farm entirely to Trump, give him zero guardrails, makes it all the more important for judges, courts, and people to speak up now while that issue isn't decided.
Well, look, to that exact point, we will continue to stay on top of this as we have any updates, whether it's in Los Angeles or Portland or Chicago or San Francisco or New York or any other city that Donald Trump tries to abuse his power in and send in the troops. And of course, we'll keep an eye on where it lands, whether it's, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals, or ultimately the U.S. Supreme Court. So for those who are watching right now, if you'd like to follow along, one step that you can all take to follow along with all of this stuff is to support Adam's work and subscribe to All Rise News. News. This is independent journalism. He doesn't work for some major media conglomerate, and if he's traveling across the country to be able to cover this stuff, he's doing it on his own dime. So if you're looking to support fearless independent journalism, All Rise News is an excellent option. I'm going to put that link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. Adam, as always, thank you so much for the time.
Always a pleasure, Brian. Thank you again for inviting me.